eliminating methane emissions, we still see methane emissions picking up. And according to the IEA, rapid cuts in methane emissions from the fossil fuels industry will allow us to avoid up to 0.1 degrees C by mid of century. And this is, to give you a sense of how impactful this is greater than taking away all cars and trucks off the road. So the good news is that tackling methane emissions can quickly make a big difference. That's why it's, again, fast mitigation of methane has been a core priority. And being a COP of action, the presidency has focused on enabling the execution from the industry in terms of abating the methane. So we created working groups, and throughout the year we had deep consultations and dialogues, including civil society, industry, NGOs, and so on around the world. And I can see many of them here has joined us today, so I would like to take this opportunity to thank them with a big round of applause. Thank you so much for your insightful support, and we look forward to continue this engagement after COP as well. So we recognize through these consultations there are two key challenges: finance and technical capacity. And over the next few years, according to the IEA, there will be over $75 billion would be required to achieve the needed reduction in methane emissions in the net zero energy scenario. And project impact is contingent on successful adoption and implementation of the right abatement technologies. So, and today, if we look at where these emissions from methane are coming from, they come from 60% come from low or mid-income countries. And that's where the financial solutions become vital. So today we are joined by a few of the leaders from the organizations that have been supporting us through the past year. And collectively, the panel that we are going to have aims to unlock a suite of financial and technical solutions to accelerate the execution at scale. Without any further ado, let me call upon the stage our esteemed panelists, starting with Fred Kropp, the President of Environmental Defense Fund. Mr. Musabbah Al-Ka'bi, Executive Director of Low Carbon Solutions and International Growth at ADNOC. Peter Abram, Chief Strategy and Growth Officer of the International Holding Company. Vicky Holub, President and CEO of Occidental. Dr. Sorry, Fred. Can you please join us here? Thank you. And Dr. Dimitrios Papathanasiou, Global Director, Energy and Extractives at Global Practice from the World Bank. Yes, Doctor, can you please join us here? Thank you. And Julia Ferrini from the IMEO at UNEP. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to start with you, Julia. So you have been supporting us in the working groups, and we are all excited now about the oil and gas companies, the 52 plus companies who signed up to eliminating their methane emissions by 2030. So would you like to share with us how UNEP can support this initiative?
Thank you for the question, Abdullah, and a pleasure for being here. We very much welcome the ambition that this COP has delivered on methane so far, especially through initiatives like the Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter. As someone told me the other day, we cannot afford to lose on methane. We need to run the methane sprint to win the CO2 marathon, and it is absolutely critical that companies join initiatives like the OGDC. Now, it is also critical that initiatives like this one are backed by credibility and transparency, and this is exactly what UNEP's International Methane Emissions Observatory was set to do, as it provides open, reliable, and actionable data in the hands of those that can fix emissions. Because at the end of the day, those that will fix the emissions are the asset managers in the companies that need to have the information. There is no way we will bring these emissions down if we don't know where they actually are occurring from. One of the key elements of this is UNEP's Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0 that provides a framework for companies to measure their emissions, and it gives them the opportunity to have better understanding. It puts the data that the world needs to turn this data into real climate action. And we will need to do this if we want to avoid the worst effects of climate change. Now, the OGMP is establishing itself as the global framework for measuring, reporting, and verifying the emissions, and we very much look forward to working with the OGDC, and I'm very pleased to learn that 52 companies have already joined the OGDC. We also work with national oil companies that have a critical role to play in facilitating the reduction of emissions as they host to half of the world's oil and gas reserve. Now, we very much look forward and stand ready to put data in the right hands through the OGMP, but also through our satellite program that is called MARS, the Methane Alert and Reduction System. The world is very much experiencing what we call a methane data revolution, and so we're sure that with increased reporting and transparency from the companies and satellites that have increasingly powerful capabilities, the world will have the data it needs to step up its action on methane. And UNEP stands ready to work with companies that are willing to live up to their commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, and we really appreciate your support as well as the suite of initiatives and instruments and tools that UNEP has been providing not only for companies, but for the governments as well in building capacity to set the right policy frameworks. I'm going to turn to Dr. Dimitrios. We witnessed on the stage on the 2nd of December during the World Climate Action Summit, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the Cop28 president, along with Secretary John Kerry, as well as Mr. Ajay Banga, celebrating the trust fund for the methane. And would you like to share with us some insights about this initiative and what it's trying to achieve?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. At the World Bank, we put climate change at the heart of development because we do believe that development and climate change action go together. When it comes to how we've been working for a long time now in developing countries and with oil and gas producing countries, national oil companies, it is more than 2 decades that we have the Global Gas Flaring Reduction Partnership operating. So we have 2 decades of experience of working around the world and improving the way oil and gas companies are operating so that they reduce routine gas flaring. And indeed, we have seen evidence that this is a partnership that yields results. In the last few years, oil production has been going up globally, but routine flaring has been substantially being reduced. So this is clearly something that can be done. And on the side of the World Bank, we were really happy and proud that we were able to act as a bridge between bringing technological capacities from advanced oil and gas companies from around the world, partnering with government in host countries that are producing oil and gas, and helping them with technology and operations so that they can do better. What we all know for sure is that everything that is saved from going up in the atmosphere is real valuable, not only because it will delay the effects of climate change, but because actually it has monetary value. I think when it comes to methane, we have a new challenge. We knew that the gas flaring monitoring has been much easier. We could do it quite reliably from space, and technology has helped us a lot to identify where the problems were, then engage with companies, improve the regulatory framework, strengthen their institutional capacity, and then get things done. Methane was always much more difficult, much harder to detect. But the good news, of course, is that, as was just mentioned, technology is improving. It is not perfect yet. There's work to be done, but it's starting. I think we can use satellite data to identify the sources in a much better way. And then, of course, we can go on the ground and do much more. What we want to help with is really developing countries want to do this. They want to do the right thing. They need the technological support, the transfer of best practices. And it is really great that, and I would like to thank the United Arab Emirates government for the leadership in this. They have put $100 million to start and really give enough resources to get the fund started. And then we have 6 major oil and gas companies that have come up with 25 million each of them. And we thank them very much. And we're working also so that additional major oil and gas companies can join us in this and make sure that we can bridge technical capabilities, best practices from the developed world, from the advanced oil and gas companies, and help developing countries who want to do the right thing, and they're either missing the technology or they need to find out quickly how they can improve operations. The last point I would like to make is that we will work with countries that subscribe and make the commitment to get to zero methane by 2030. That is a key role. We want to work with serious players who are committed, and then we will provide as much resources and capacity that we can on our side, and we will facilitate the financing for investments as we go forward. And again, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Dr. Demetrios. And it's exciting. It was very exciting when we saw the successful implementation of this fund in one of the developing nations that helped kickstart and accelerate the methane abatement in that nation. So I'm going to turn to Vicky Holub as a contributor to this fund and giving your advocacy on methane and CO2 emissions. What would you like to share with us today about what does it mean for Occidental to be part of this?
Well, thank you. And I'd like to say that His Excellency Minister Suhail said it right. It's really about the emissions. It's not about the fuel source. It's about the emissions, and it's about collaboration within our industry and hopefully better collaboration outside our industry. We're producing over 100 million barrels a day in the world today. It's not going to happen overnight that we can eliminate our methane emissions. It's going to take a lot of effort. And the effort is only going to be accomplished and deliver the results that we need if we're more collaborative and if we can be parts of organizations that are driving to make this happen. So I'd like to just give you a few of the things that we're a part of that we believe is making a difference. First of all, we joined the environmental partnership that was established by the American Petroleum Institute in the United States. That's a group that's helping to share best practices among the larger and smaller companies in the U.S. to help all of us get better with respect to our day-to-day operations. The second thing we joined was the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, which is now a group of 12 companies that are committed to making the world a better place by, first of all, methane emission reductions and also getting more CO2 captured and out of the atmosphere. Bob Dudley, who chairs the OGCI, is here today. And what we did in the OGCI was really unique to me in that we challenged each other, and we challenged each other quite frequently to get better at what we do. But one of the biggest challenges was all of us making the commitment that we will strive to achieve zero methane emissions by 2030. And to set that goal, considering the fact that we have facilities all around the world that have, some of which are 50 and 60 years old technologies that have to be replaced and rebuilt and or revised. So what that initiative did for Occidental is when we rolled it out It was similar to rolling out our HES initiatives, where every year our commitment is to have zero fatalities and to try to approach zero injuries. And in the kind of industry that we work in, where there's high pressure, there's a lot of risk that our workers face every day, and to make the commitment that we're going to have no injuries is a significant commitment. And sometimes that doesn't happen the way we want it to happen. But to make a commitment to have zero methane emissions by 2030 is a dramatic and very impactful commitment. What had happened when we rolled it out in our organization is people started coming up with incredibly new and innovative ideas around how to do it. And had we not had the discussion in OGCI, and had we not had these 12 companies figure out that while it might seem impossible, we want to go down this path and we want to make this happen. And so within our organization, it has changed our paradigm in the way we think about whether we can do this or not. So we're moving toward making sure that we do all that we can to make that happen. Now, one is we did sign up for the World Bank's Zero Routine Flaring initiative as well. We were the first U.S. oil and gas organization to endorse that. We've also, the UN, the Methane Guiding Principles and Oil and Gas Methane Partnership, the OGMP 2.0. We were the first U.S. company to sign up for that as well. So we signed up for the Aiming for Zero Methane Emissions initiative in addition to that. And then we just signed up for the ONG, Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter, and the World Bank's Global Flaring and Methane Reduction Fund. And so we've signed up for a lot of things. We're a part of a lot of organizations, and we're trying to contribute to those and that will hopefully make us all stronger. And then part of that is just putting peer pressure on those who are not a part of these initiatives already, to help them understand what drove us to do it and what can drive them to do it as well. And so those are a lot of words, but how do those words translate into reality and to making a difference in the world? And what we've done is we've focused on three things. Is one, you can't eliminate methane emissions unless you know what they are and where they are and why they're happening. So leak detection and repair is critically important. We have put together an emissions technology team that focuses on taking the data that our leak detection team finds, and the data that the drones and the fixed-wing aircraft find and the satellites find, taking that and getting it back to the source, and then trying to figure out how do we deal with that source. And when we're dealing with it, there are kind of two different things that we deal with. First of all, the processes that we have today, how those processes work, and how we can modify those. And then the other thing is changing out equipment and changing our facilities designs. So around the processes, we've found that one way to eliminate that's a non-routine flaring is to have a closed loop system in some of our operations, where when a field goes down, instead of going to flare, it goes into a closed loop where we can actually send that gas to storage or send it to a bypass. Second is to eliminate high bleed pneumatics, and we've put forth a massive effort in our more than 28,000 wells in the United States, to take the facilities that are associated with those and eliminate pneumatic valves and automation that's allowing methane to bleed out. Also in our chemical process, we're taking hydrogen that comes as a part of the process of making our chemicals and using that hydrogen to generate electricity, thereby not having the methane gas go through there and have potential leaks from that mass. So it's a reduction in the use of gas, also a reduction in the use of fugitive emissions from that gas. Then with respect to facility and equipment designs, we've now moved toward making sure that any tanks that we do have in existence today have vapor recovery and/or a way to take anything coming off, any methane coming off those tanks to a different source. We're changing our compression to electrification, And that's another thing that's going to make a challenge for our entire industry is a lot of our industry is trying to electrify gas-driven compressors, but the supply chain for that is becoming a challenge. So some of what we're doing will be held up a bit by supply chain, but we're trying to work around that. In addition to electrifying compression, we're electrifying our drilling rigs, and we're electrifying one of our well service rigs just recently got electrified, and we're going to expand that out too. And when we talk about putting more on the grid, electrifying things and putting them on the grid in the United States and other places around the world, that then creates another issue around how do we strengthen the grid so that it can handle this massive amount of change to electrification. And I'll just put in a plug for our net power power generation process. So a new technology which takes hydrocarbon gases and combust it with oxygen instead of air, creating an emission-free source of electricity. And that's going to be needed, and that can be used to strengthen grids around the world where you're trying to electrify to reduce gas emissions, and then to do it with electricity that's driven by an emission-free source. I know I need to finish here, so I'll just finish to say with all of this and all that we're doing as a part of the process, we have reduced our emissions by our methane emissions by 58% since 2019. And our CO2 emissions by 18% since 2019. So it is making a difference. On a go-forward basis, though, the reality is our industry has to dramatically change our facilities design. We have to get away from having leak points as a part of our designs, and we have to have closed-loop systems throughout all that we're doing with the installations that we're putting together today.
Thank you, Vicky. And it's great to hear about the progress made at Occidental, as well as how this private sector World Bank collaboration will help at a global scale, accelerating the abatement of methane emissions. I'm going to quickly turn to Greg Chernow, the Managing Director and Portfolio Manager from PIMCO, to share with us how do you see the financial sector could play a role in the execution phase of the methane abatement?
Thank you. Thank you to the COP presidency for including me and my firm in this panel. I'm on. You know, we have a fairly large amount of capital that needs to get deployed. $75 billion is the estimate, 15 to 17 billion in emerging and frontier markets. We're going to need debt capital markets to help scale the commitments that have been made already and commitments to come down the road by 2030 to achieve the targeted methane emissions. The fortunate part is that much of the technology we have today can go a long way to reducing a lot of these emissions, and many of that can be had at little to no cost in some areas. And we believe that it is good to get the capital ready to start investing in these projects, to start moving in a timely way to addressing methane. Now, the other fortunate part is that investors, clients of ours and other ones in the industry, are looking for ways to decarbonize their portfolios, to build resiliency into their portfolios, but as well as to do investing that will help reduce global methane emissions as well as other carbon emissions. What we need in place is to bring together groups like this panel, various stakeholders ranging from regulators to corporates to civil society, technical engineers, bank syndicates, issuers, asset holders and asset owners to find a way in which we can create credible, durable, scalable fixed income solutions so that we can usher this capital forward. When we look at the frontier and emerging markets, a lot of those places have the greatest opportunity and the greatest risk that needs to be addressed, because many of those national oil companies are really important to the state for delivering social services. That's an obstacle that we need to spend time on so that we can get the capital there and to address the emissions, because in many of those markets, the methane intensity is very high relative to global standards. Now, we think that there's a lot of opportunity there, particularly given the fact that trapping that methane and converting it to energy useful energy could also address some of the previously discussed issues with not having affordable clean energy for a developing world. So we view this not as an either or, but a yes and more, where yes, we need to think about what it means to transition a lot of the corporates for the future, but more important today, or equally important today, is that we have to tackle in a timely way global methane emissions, and we think capital markets are going to be an incredibly important component of scaling that needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I'm going to quickly turn on, because I see that our time is running out, to Peter. Peter, would you like to share with us what is IHC working on to support the execution of abatement projects and methane?
Thank you, Abdullah. And I'm really grateful to be having this and sharing this experience with everybody. It's amazing and wonderful what Cop28 has done for Abu Dhabi, and to have witnessed it over many years, having lived here. The change in climate action and what has happened over the last few years as we've built to COP28 has been tremendous. It's important that I also provide some background on IHC's recent major climate announcement that will serve as a solution to accelerate methane abatement as one of its objectives. Last week, Sirius International Holding, a subsidiary of Abu Dhabi-based conglomerate and ADX-listed IHC, International Holding Company, made a climate announcement that was of significance. We launched the creation of a pioneering climate company focused on offering end-to-end industrial-scale solutions. Smart Sustainable Solutions, to be known as S3, will focus on 4 critical segments of the new climate economy: methane, carbon, circular economy, and water. S3 aims to address developing nations and foster global cooperation. The company has already begun to implement impactful projects. S3 will deploy capital and management resources on an unprecedented scale, becoming one of the largest companies dedicated to combating climate change. To give you an idea, in our current overall S3 portfolio, including our pipeline, we're negotiating up to $5 billion worth of investments in various projects, including a strategic collaboration agreements both with ADNOC and with SOCAR across all our verticals. We're keen to deploy our capabilities and backing and look forward to working with governments, with national oil companies and with service companies. We're not a fund. We are an operating company, and importantly, we're looking to finance, build, operate and transfer projects, and also to look at PPP models as well. We'll be creating consortiums that deliver end-to-end solutions. We are prepared and ready to lead party, to be matchmakers amongst these stakeholders, and ensuring that stakeholders have a say and that we can work very strongly with them, particularly in those growing countries. These initiatives and our models assume significant spending, and we are not limiting ourselves at all. These business verticals will play a vital role in advancing corporate agendas, focusing on achieving net zero emissions, fulfilling methane pledges, and implementing strategies for net water impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think we heard you mentioning ADNOC, and we are aware of ADNOC's methane management programs, but Musabbah, if you'd like to share with us what's ADNOC doing at a global scale to help abating methane emissions.
Yeah. Thank you, Abdullah. And truly a pleasure to be here among these esteemed panelists. At ADNOC, our strategy is very clear, is to decarbonize the energy system of today while investing in the energies of tomorrow. On our achievements, we're very proud to achieve one of the best performance among our peers, one of the lowest carbon-intensive producers, and we fully subscribe to the targets set by COP28 when it comes to the zero methane by 2030. We even raise our ambition to become a net zero by 2045. So when it comes to the international, having all this excellent, I would say, performance, we ask ourselves, can we also help and expand best practices, technologies elsewhere in the world? And I'm not going to also highlight what Vicky's mentioned on the operational side. It is well known. So the technology is available, and the methods that minimize methane are widely known to the industry. So we're glad to partner with Cyrus and try to help other businesses, other jurisdictions in minimizing the methane. We're also going to announce today a partnership with, in the detection side with Yasat, a satellite company here in the UAE, GHG, a leading satellite company from Canada, to deploy and advance monitoring techniques. We're also partnering with some technology providers like Siemens Energy and Standard Digital with a very simple theme to turn methane from a liability to an opportunity. That consortium captured the methane power generation to feed data centers. So great concept. Last but not least, I would like to highlight that we launched the Decarbonization Challenge. Yesterday, we announced the winner, but one of the companies that made it to the top 10, by the way, 650 companies, startup companies, applied, and one of the top 10 companies were focusing primarily on methane mitigations. So a lot of commitment to the technology side, and we're more than happy to work with like-minded partners, governments, to address the methane issue and accelerate these targets by 2030.
Thank you, Musabbeh. I'm quickly going to turn to you, Fred. EDF has been always focusing on advocating the importance of abating methane emissions at a global scale. So listening to the suite of new technological and financial solutions that will be available, how do you feel about it?
Well, I think, the good news is, as Greg said, that we have the technologies. They're already in commercial use. This is not one of those climate problems where we need to invent something new. We need to deploy it and get more companies using it. And the good news is that OGDC has brought a lot of new companies to the table. The majority don't have a lot of experience, though, and so they're going to need help in how do you go out and fix the emissions, how do you monitor, how do you find what needs to be fixed, and then how do you report. But that's good news. That's an opportunity to have these practices spread, and I think that's why OGDC has the potential to be so meaningful. But it does mean we're going to need the financial help. The companies will need the financial help in order to finance the improvements, and it does mean that they're going to need also technical assistance. And it's appropriate that that technical assistance comes from existing companies that already have the know-how, industry helping industry. And so I'm very pleased to announce that EDF has joined with the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, IOGP, and the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, OGCI, and the Methane Guiding Principles to develop a technical support network that will do this industry-to-industry help to develop, build off existing programs to deploy this expertise. And over the next few months, we'll be working out the details on governance, on servicing, on resourcing this effort. But our goal is to have all the details worked out and fully announced by the beginning of the second quarter. There's a third and last piece, too, and that's accountability, so that the world can have confidence that this is going forward. And on accountability, I was pleased to be able to announce just a few days ago with our partners at the International Energy Agency, the IEA, and the International Methane Emissions Observatory, IMEO, that there's going to be a partnership that brings the science, the analytics, and the engagement to make sure that this gets done in a way that, we're all accountable for. And part of that will be using methane sat. This is a satellite that the Environmental Defense Fund will launch in the beginning of the new year that will be able to look at all major oil and gas facilities around the world onshore at least multiple times per week. IEA is going to bring its tremendous analytical capability to the table. MEO, the phenomenal data that they're collecting from all the satellites and all the sources, and EDF will be using all that data and analytics to engage with investors, policymakers, industry, and civil society. So this is work that urgently needs to be done. And Dr. Abdullah, the way I feel about it is we are off to a great start. This is something the oil and gas industry can do that the world needs to have done. And I'm so pleased to be a partner with all of you to make it happen.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thanks so much to our esteemed panelists. And moving on to the next panel, I'd like to thank you so much once again. And with 7 years to go to 2030, it's critical that we launch all of these initiatives, and it's an open invitation for additional initiatives from the globe to be able to accelerate methane abatement. With that, I would like to invite Bjorn Otto, the chairman of the executive committee at OGCI, for an announcement.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. The Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter has scale, it has reach, and it is action-oriented. It is a unique opportunity to be impactful on climate action and also to accelerate the energy transition. That is why we in the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, under the leadership of Bob Dudley and supported by the OGCI member companies, have been so eager to see this happen. Today is a milestone and a beginning. In support of the bold signatories, the leadership and stamina of the COP presidency, and also the collaborative spirit of the Charter, OGCI has accepted the invitation to start leading, take the initial lead in the follow-up of this Charter, an important initiative, to get the wheels going. The Charter is set. The implementation you as companies will be responsible for, but you will not be alone. We will strive to establish a lean, an inclusive and collaborative way of work. We will strive to be a platform and a connector, sharing experiences and examples across the industry to make the decarbonization journey easier, to speed up actions. And we also need to get ready to share and track progress and be ready to share that at upcoming COPs. We will do this working with the signatories, working with the industry at large and society as well. All of us have a job to do. Let's get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn Otto. I'm going to quickly turn the stage back to our principal lead, Samir Al-Shihabi. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bjorn Otto and OGCI, for the announcement. It's an important message to the world that this is going to continue past the COP and accelerate. So let's get going to try to do our next session. And I would welcome to the stage first Mr. Ricardo Barragan, CEO of Ecopetrol Colombia, Professor Miles Allen from Oxford University, Ms. Orishimaya Ayasan from NNPC Nigeria, Mr. Patrick Puyane from Total Energies, and Mr. Arun Kumar Singh from ONGC India. Our colleague, Mr. Farhat Ben Gadara from NOC Libya, hopefully will join us shortly. thank you, everybody, again for being here. We appreciate your boldness to be a part of this initiative. I would like to start with Mr. Singh from India. As we all know, India's energy demand is exploding. ONGC is a big part of supporting that. How is ONGC going about taking on this role, but also working through the Charter and the decarbonization efforts that we're pushing for?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In fact, you may be aware that ONGC is National Oil Company of India, and India's energy hunger is very, very high for the next 20 years. It's already the most populous country of the world, 4 trillion economy, 7 trillion by 2030, 7.5. And population will continue to grow, and per capita energy consumption is 1/3 of global average. So naturally, our hunger for energy will continue. But at the same time, we are equally responsible, and therefore we were first when the Charter came. We were one of the first to commit that we will do this. So primarily, coming back to, you may be aware of numbers, but still, we are committed as a country to do 500 gigawatt of renewable by 2030, 50% at least of total energy coming from renewable. Energy density means per capita of GDP going down by 45% by 2030. These are all the national commitment, not ONGC's. Now in this subset is ONGC, so I'm going to talk about ONGC because ONGC's performance has to be in relation with what government aspiration or nation's aspiration is. First and foremost, we have been working very consistently on reducing the, first of all, methane emission, and that is, you can say, in our case, because the geography and the population being so favorable that we hardly have any scope to either, we have very small number to capture in ONGC system to reduce methane release. Of course, it is there, but now the cost was prohibitive in the last mile. And that part, if the collaboration kicks in, technology kicks in, we'll be too happy to adopt. And we are working on it, so we offer all of you, those who are in this space, to collaborate with us. We want to genuinely, we mean that we want to help the planet by making zero methane emission, methane at least, from our operation. Flaring, we have reduced almost 80%. Earlier, we used to flare around 14, 15 MMSCM. Now, we are hardly flaring less than now it is around 2%. So almost 12% of total flare, means whatever releasing we were doing. Now it is back to 2%. But still 2% needs to go down. Because fortunately in our country, there is a demand everywhere. We are so populous that there is hardly any place where humans are not there. So we can always mobilize this gas to people. So in a very small cost, we don't have population density issue. So consumption is in any case there. Then third thing comes from ONGC is our own consumption of gas. Because whatever methane we produce, we consume a lot for our production. They basically either, so basically meaning their power generation and pumping and all that, compression and all that. In fact, that need, in fact, we have aimed at that by 2028, we will have a substantive reduction in that by moving it to green electricity and release that gas for market. Because that gas, what we are consuming ourselves. Today, our total production gas, 20% of the gas we consume ourselves for internal purposes. A substantive portion of this we want to, we take it to green electricity because we, as you are aware, some of you may be aware, most of the production is very close to our shore. So naturally we move green electricity there and run electrification of all the drives. So these three are one part. Then second part ONGC is doing is in the process of setting up 10 gigawatt solar and wind put together. So that is our contribution to nation's objective is, of course, 500 gigawatt. In that, we want to have very small share of 10 gigawatt, so that we add. Then we have a pump storage project. You may be aware we have lots of rivers, and we can, construct a dam and use it as a storage, energy storage in night. So those projects we are doing. Then 1 million ton ammonia plant we are in the process of putting on the west coast. So these are the host of measures, and plus 25 at least CBG plant, what we call compressed biogas plant, because we have a lot of agri-waste. From agri-waste, whatever we can produce as CBG, so that will go also in the economy, and whatever we can do for circular economy. This in nutshell is ONGC. Technology-wise, we ask all the world for the help because we truly want to do something good for the planet. Finance-wise, as you are aware, oil companies are not that, because they have 3-4 years have been good. So naturally, if there is any finance need, that will come after some time, not now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pouyanné, thank you for Total's leading support in the charter and bringing on the partners. How do you see this as a new start for the industry?
First of all, I would like to say thank you, and thank you to the presidency for this very pragmatic COP. I think you are touching the fundamental poles: tripling renewables, doubling efficiency, abating methane emissions, and engaging the oil and gas industry. As you said, it's very important, this charter, because I think, and what has happened during all this year, to put together more than 50 companies, international companies and national companies, all our partners, because it's a real step forward, I think, together to work on Scope 1 and 2. As you said, our industry represents, in fact, the own emissions, 10% of the world emissions. We know that we'll need to, the transition, oil and gas will remain for quite a long time, and so we need absolutely to produce oil and gas in a different way by slashing down emissions, and we can do it. We have the technology. It's a question, again, of focusing on it. And I think putting all this group together is, for me, a real step forward. Some people outside will say it's not enough. I think it's really worth, because it will help us everywhere to develop, deploy our technologies, to propose projects. Scope 1 and 2 is at the core of our action. You know what it is about? I think Vicky explained it very well. It's about saving energy, consuming less. And we can do a lot by just saving energy, in particular in our refineries, in our petrochemical plants. We know it's a cost, and our people have plenty of ideas, which are not very high cost, plenty of low-hanging fruits. Then it's a matter of electrification. That is what very explained, electrifying our processes. There are plenty of technologies available. It's done here in Abu Dhabi, electrification the offshore, in Norway, and other places. Of course, it has a cost, but it's part of a license to operate, I would say, for the future, and this is a duty for all of us. Stop methane, yes. I would like just to share with you that methane is really something that we have here. And I think this platform, offering the target to, I would say, aim for zero methane by 2030, is really the right point. We can do it. It's like in my company, I use it as aiming for zero fatalities, aiming for zero methane. You know, it's things which are there. It's a question of stop flaring. Stop routine flaring. It's part, again, gas flared is a loss. We can monetize it. Stop venting. Even on all installation, North Sea, we are implementing that, and it's not very costly, in fact. And then it's a matter of fugitive emissions. And that it's also, and so measuring these emissions is key. We know our industry is relying about some factors of emissions. I think Total Energies, we have developed a technology with a drone that we have deployed in 2023 worldwide on all our assets to measure really what are the methane emissions. And we have some few surprises, some positive, some negative, but it helps us to intervene. The idea in our teams is to say, okay, we measure and we must behave when we have a leakage of methane emissions as we behave if we have a leakage of oil, you know, immediately acting. And when you know, you act. So I would encourage to share this technology. By the way, today we announced with some of our partners in the room, Sonangol in Angola, Petrobras in Brazil, and Soka in Azerbaijan, but we have decided to put our technology of measurements at their disposal for measuring all, not only our own assets, but all the assets of their country. So I'm happy to share that. I think it's part of the spirit of the OGDC, as it was explained, to bring the technologies that we have and to share it with all our national oil companies. This is an example. So if more national companies want to have access, it's open and it's for free, to be clear. It's just that I think we need to engage and deploy the measurement. It's important. So that's the whole program. I think also, in our case, we have decided, as you know, to act by investing, for example, in Iraq, where there is a lot of flare, there is a lack of electricity, so investing in order to stop flaring there and to transform this flared gas in a resource for electricity is also things that oil and gas companies can act. So I welcome, and I can assure you that we are friends of VGCI, and TotalEnergies will continue to be committed with all our national companies partners in order to put into action this charter, and I think it's really a step forward.
Thank you, sir. And you heard it here. It's free. Ms. Ayasan, NNPC has really kickstarted their decarbonization plan, and I know that a lot of work has been done on the methane side. Do you see this charter as an impediment or an opportunity?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samuel. I think it's a major opportunity, not just for NNPC Limited, but I think for the entire sub-region. The Global South, as we all know, contributes 3% to emissions, but that does not exclude us from the consequences of emissions. I think the decarbonization drive and the charter is not just an ethical imperative, but also a strategic imperative for even the national oil company like Nigeria. For us, we've declared this year, this decade, as a decade of gas, and the sole reason not just to produce more gas for export, but gas to energize even the local economy. And not just the local economy, but the entire sub-region as well. So we believe that the charter, working towards zero flare, working towards methane emission reduction by 2030, working towards scope 1 and 2 CO2 by 2050, we're totally aligned to that, and we see that as being very, very achievable. Indeed, we are all working collaboratively, and that makes a big difference. And I'd like to take Patrick on his offer, because I think as partners, we must work together. Like Dr. Abdul, in his introductory speech said, the two major challenges, finance and technology. If we don't solve those problems, then it will be difficult for us to move forward. So for the Global South, I think we need to work closer with our partners who have the technology, and we need to key into some of the financial offers that we have already on the table on how we can deploy this, to totally eliminating, the methane that we produce from our operations. And to talk to to other alternative sources of energy, we are totally committed to even expanding our reach for other sources of renewables, for example. I know the hydrogen question it's for us, it's quite a complex one for now. So the focus first is on how we will clean the operations, our gas operations, and then go into renewables like solar, and other affordable sources, alternative sources of energy as well. So for NNPC, as the major energy company in Africa, we believe this charter is a very, very important one. It's a golden opportunity for us. And I believe I'm speaking not just for NNPC, but for the sub-region as a whole. And we believe that we will continue to work with the group to ensure that we achieve the objectives for which we have set out.
Thank you. And NNPC has been an amazing supporter and bringing as an ambassador for Africa and the APO, specifically the African Petroleum Producers Organization. So thank you for all your support. I'll turn to Professor Allen for your kind of independent consideration and thoughts about the Charter, and how you see this as a start and what you think needs to happen going forward.
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me. You're quite right, Samir. It is a start. It's a very welcome start. Ever since we discovered the cumulative impact of carbon dioxide emissions on global climate back in 2009, it's been clear that all industries need to stop dumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere if we are to meet our climate goals. And so in that, the commitment by the oil and gas industry to end your own emissions by mid-century is, of course, very welcome. It's very necessary. But, of course, I have to say it's not enough. As Minister Suhail said, we also need to decarbonise the full fossil fuel value chain. And this means that we need to, and there are basically two ways to do this. We can either stop using fossil fuels altogether, or we can ensure that any continued fossil fuel use by mid-century is fully abated, which means 1 ton of carbon dioxide has to be captured and returned to geological storage for every ton still generated by any continued use of fossil fuels. Now, there are probably people, maybe here, maybe outside this room, who think the only solution is complete fossil fuel phase-out. And back in 2009, when we first discovered this cumulative impact of carbon dioxide on global climate, remember then the goal was 2 degrees. And back then, it might have been possible to meet our climate goals by phasing out fossil fuel use altogether. But it's no longer possible for 2 reasons. It's too late now for 2 reasons. First, we didn't start reductions in 2009. The latest emissions are higher than ever. And second, we have a more ambitious goal. So we are aiming now for well below 2 degrees and pursuing efforts to 1.5 degrees. So it's clear that we have to, and this is where the oil and gas industry has a vital role to play, because we have to stop fossil fuels from causing global warming before the world stops using fossil fuels. And if you must take this message away with you, because we need your help to do this. You know the subsurface, you know the geology of this planet better than anyone. And geology is no respecter of ancient empires. We need to store carbon dioxide where it's possible geologically to do so. And therefore, the oil and gas industry has a vital role to play in scaling up what will become one of the greatest industries of this century, carbon dioxide disposal. If you succeed in stopping fossil fuels from causing global warming before the world stops using fossil fuels, then we all succeed. And frankly, if you fail, we all fail. I'm sorry to be blunt, but this is the situation we're in. But if I'm being blunt, I can also say you have great responsibility, but you also have great power. By the simple measure of what people are willing to pay for the products you sell, you are the greatest industry the world has ever known. We need you now to step forward and stop the products you sell from causing global warming. I am confident you can do it. If you can do it by mid-century, our grandchildren will thank you for ensuring their prosperity, just as we have to thank you for ensuring our prosperity today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, and we appreciate the passion in which you're pushing the industry. If I may turn to Mr. Roa for your perspective from Colombia and the efforts that Ecopetrol is taking within their operations, because you have a lot of operations yourselves, not just in addition to your joint operations, on how you want to implement the Charter, and any support you think you will need to do so.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, everybody. I'm greatly honored to be part of this conference in order to accelerate climate action and to analyze the progress and initiatives within the energy sector consider the world's climate distortion. It's very important that you know that in public companies like Ecopetrol Enterprise it's very important the Ecopetrol has the effort to gather the industry climate change forum to establish the direction for the decarbonization and oil and gas industry in the most cost-efficient, effective and strategic manner. We have clear that Ecopetrol, like national company, has an additional effort to be a support of the economy of the country. In this case, the national enterprise as Ecopetrol face the additional challenge of securing resources for emerging economies like Colombia. In recent years, Ecopetrol has constituted between 12 and 20% of the national budget. Since 2020, we have measured reduced 1.5 million tons of CO2 in true energy efficiency, methane reductions, and fluorine reductions. We have over-delivered in our reduction goal each year since 2020. We have measured 95% of all of our direct methane emissions through satellite technology and overflights. We have closed 1,700 leaks since declaring our goal in 2020. We are also support of 0.6 million parts. We achieved gold standard OGMP standard this year. We are committed to continuous reduction emissions and showing an example for other national oil companies. However, like you said, teacher, we need your support to accelerate all our goals and our plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I would like to thank the panelists for your remarks. This is clearly the start, and we hope that we will continue to build on this momentum. Thank you again. Please a round of applause for our panelists, and welcome you too. Back to your seats. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So to wrap up our session, I'm happy to welcome Mr. Jean-Paul Prats, President of Petrobras, to the stage for our closing keynote.
Assalamu alaikum, His Excellency Minister Mohammad Masroei, Minister of Energy of UAE, Dr. Abdullah, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, Arun, all my friends, greetings to all. I come to this venue representing Petrobras, which is a global South Brazilian company that since the Paris Agreement in 2015 has already reduced its absolute operational emissions by 40% and methane by 62%. I come to this session just as we reached gold standard on the oil and gas methane partnership, OGMP. Julia was here. Thus, thank you. I would like to outline some of the challenges and opportunities we see ahead, both of which faced head-on throughout this Cop28 by the state parties and civil society alike, and hope to see discussed until we meet in Brazil at Belém during COP30. We view OGDA as an avenue for credible and stable progress without turnarounds and respectful of the complex social economic disparities of the world. According to IEA, their reports on the oil and gas industry net zero transitions, less than 50% of our current oil and gas production comes from companies that have targets to lower their operational emissions. The first order task of the oil or for the oil industry is to lower substantially these emissions. The report also states that quotes, far broader coalition with much more ambitious targets is needed. Indeed, we need more companies, domestic and international, private or national oil companies, majors or independents. All of us have a duty to perform, to achieve those goals, to reach the milestones required to tackle the climate emergency, conscious of the reality that the security of energy is both essential for life and burdening to the planet, as also is the understanding and orientation of President Lula to all of us in the government. The journey of energy transition will be a story of integration of different energy sources and the gradual substitution towards decarbonization. We have an obligation to gather under this banner, to improve step by step, without magic solutions, based on the necessities of real world and real people. In this sense, I congratulate the Cop28 leadership in the person of His Excellency Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, my colleague, CEO of ADNOC, our sister company, for launching the basis of this broader coalition, a challenge with high materiality, 5 gigatons of CO2 equivalent, nearly 10% of the world's emissions, much of it tackling methane immediately, before 2030. A coalition that begins here, but needs to persist and evolve in the next years. There's still a lot to make, not only regarding operational emissions, but the deployment of clean energy solution as well. When we add Scope 3 to our target, we deal with 18 gigatons CO2 equivalent, 1/3 of the global emissions, which come to around 57. We are developing our solution as we go. For our part, our strategic plan for the next years considers a capital spending of $11.5 billion during 24-28 in low-carbon solutions. It means 11% on average and 16% at 2028 of the total investment, in line with the benchmark between 15-25% of the oil and gas largest proportions. We know we were late, we're catching up now. We are still learning, and we are glad to share with other colleagues our commitment and best practices, how to equate our social and environmental responsibilities. Behind this compact, we gather 50 companies to start, each of them with their stories and challenges to share. Together, we can develop a credible roadmap for a journey for energy transition that is both comprehensive and fair. My friends, allow me to be a little informal here now, to say that we are big guys and we can do big things. We can deliver results, and we will have to report them very soon. We have big revenues. We have big investment capacity. We have big global presence, big competence in management, in complex operations, big research, development, technology and innovation, big mitigation, compensation, decarbonization capacity. We can do a lot faster, and we can bring many with us. We mentioned supplier chain. We need to transform and adopt and embrace our suppliers. And we need to embrace people, and we need to be concerned with people, because energy transition will only be valid if it's a fair energy transition. With this support, we will be proud, certainly proud, to report results in COP 2030 in Belém, with much progress and ambition in a much cleaner outlook for a far more sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to do one thing, and to take a look at this map for a second. You can see where the concentrations are. You can see where the gaps are. You can see the difference between the IOC blue and the NOC orange. And you see we still have a lot to do. And so our call for all the members of the Oil and Gas Charter is to let's make this map filled up. Let's fill it up. Let's make sure that the entire industry gets to where we need it to get to. Because you can see the opportunity is great, and we can see where the gaps are. And we know there's a lot to be done. And as Jean-Paul mentioned, this is the industry that can do it. So thank you again for all your support. Thank you for starting this with us, and we look forward to continuing the journey in the years ahead. And please enjoy the rest of Energy Day. We've got a lot of programs today for you. Thank you.